Anyways, we've been having really productive meetings with representatives, congressional representatives, and senators. So we're going to continue on building that relationship, having conversations, and listening to what they have to say. And they've been very productive because they're listening to what we have to say too. Making sure that the American people are fully informed, their representatives are fully informed of what Canada brings to the table on this trade deal.
At this point, are you actually changing any minds, though? We do know that some of the people you're meeting with have spoken out in favor of tariffs.
I understand that, and as we inform them, I think their minds should change a little bit. They have a better perspective, and we're all learning. Every single premier that's down here, I'm learning a lot about numbers, what's going back and forth between the borders, the aluminum. For example, I didn't realize that the U.S. uses 5 million tons of aluminum, and they can only produce 750,000 tons, and that Quebec gives them 3 million tons. Their system would shut down if they didn't ship them aluminum.
What do you think of counter-tariffs on aluminum? What do you think about that?
Well, that's going to be up to negotiations, and Francois Legault has his opinion on it. So we'll see.
What's your opinion on it?
Well, let's see how this goes forward, and we'll be able to deal with it when.
Now you had a harder stance earlier on when this first happened. Talking about shutting off their electricity and all that. Are you finding that you're taking more of a diplomatic approach now that you're down here in D.C.?
Well, I think both sides have to take a diplomatic approach. They have to listen. The worst thing that could happen to American citizens and Canadian citizens, that it turns out to a full-out tariff war. It'd be terrible. Both sides would get hurt. People would be getting laid off at their jobs, and we just want to make sure we inform the people of the U.S. how serious this really is. I think every Canadian wakes up, all 40 million wake up hearing about tariffs, worried about tariffs. I can tell you, whatever, the 350 million people aren't waking up worrying about tariffs.
Should we reopen the trade agreement as soon as possible?
I apologize, yes.
About the trade agreement, should we reopen it as fast as possible?
I would like to. Let's get this away, because as I keep saying, the only thing certain is uncertainty. Markets hate uncertainty, businesses hate uncertainty, and all of us hate uncertainty. We need to get this deal done and move forward as quickly as possible. I'll take one more.
Is your picture further integration? Sovereignty,
yes.
Especially considering people like Howard Lutnick has been in the room when Trump makes these conversations, and Marco Rubio has been asked about it and hasn't pushed back.
Yeah, nothing's more important than Canadian sovereignty. We're a strong, proud country. What they don't realize, how resilient Canadians are, and we take pride in being Canadian. That doesn't mean that we can't have an incredible trade relationship with our closest ally and friend. And if you talk to the American people, again, they love Canadians. Canadians love Americans. We're so interconnected on supply chains and everything else, and even on the culture, we're connected. So,
is there any indication that any of your message is getting directly to President Trump? Or any of these people saying, "I will talk to the president"?
I truly believe it's going. He knows we're here. I've been told. So yes, the message is getting through, especially on the subcommittees, the Ways and Means Committee, and the more we communicate to the American people, the more they go to their representatives, the senators or congresspeople or governors, and the word gets out.
With Howard Lutnick,
I'm sorry?
The next step after this, what is that?
Well, we're going to continue communicating. But folks, I thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm a little chilled, but I got to go.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Premier Eby, what's your sense of this? These meetings, are these working out?
We've had a series of really positive discussions with representatives, both Democrats and Republicans alike, and the common theme among all the meetings is that the elected representatives from all parties understand the importance of the relationship between the United States and Canada, the importance of all of us understanding what the objectives are in terms of these trade discussions and tariff discussions, and the need to clarify that. It's a puzzle for all of us, and certainly it's a puzzle for us from British Columbia to understand why the Americans would make themselves pay 25% more for aluminum that they can't get anywhere else. So just trying to understand our path forward here has been very helpful, and to open these lines of communication has been very useful.
What did Dominic LeBlanc say to you guys in the meeting this morning? What was his message going into his meeting with Howard Lutnick?
Well, our message to Dom, and at least my message, and the message of the premiers around the table, I think, was that we have full support for a coordinated Team Canada effort here. His audience with a key decision maker in the president's office and the administration is critically important, and that we're all sticking together. He listened to us very carefully about what our concerns were and what our messages were that we want delivered, that we're unified, we're going to stick together. Canada will never be the 51st state, but there's lots we can talk about in terms of working closely together on transnational organized crime or whatever it is the president is interested in. We don't have to fight and cause economic damage to each other to do that.
One of the issues on the table is further integration, further economic integration with the states. Is that something we should be considering at this moment?
Well, I'll tell you, for British Columbia, the last thing we're considering is further economic integration with the United States right now. And that's because of the tariff threat. What we're doing is we're diversifying markets. We're looking for other customers, everyone from our aluminum producers to our miners, to our forestry companies, to our agriculture producers, our seafood sales, all of it. And that's really unfortunate, because that's at a cost of prosperity to British Columbians and Canadians and to Americans alike. That's the message we're trying to deliver here. Ultimately, I think we can do more together, and if we can find those areas where we can work together and have confidence when we sign a deal that's going to be stuck to, and that's to the good for all of us. But if we can't do it, we're going to look elsewhere.
Sorry to interrupt, but that's pretty much the exact opposite message that we heard from Mr. Ford, which is promoting this fortress and CAM. We need to be even more integrated on like a security alliance, and let's get closer trading relationships. So how can you say the premiers are united when you're taking such a different approach to your relationship with the U.S. right now?
Well, I think there are things that we can work on, and I definitely think that when we work together, we can increase our prosperity. But what's on offer right now, unfortunately, is continued threats of tariffs, uncertainty. It's not clear what the objectives are, and in that atmosphere, British Columbia only has one choice, which is to look to other customers, and that's what we're going to do.
What about the snow? Is the snow affecting the people you're able to meet with? Does it change the itinerary at all?
Yeah, well, I'm glad to see that that Washington, D.C. is still open. As a Canadian, even from the West Coast, even from a warmer part of Canada, we can function in the snow. It's nice to see that the representatives are all showing up, and we're having good meetings here anyway.
Premier, on this threat,
Canada was too influenced by one person in the White House. After these meetings, are you feeling any reassurance that it doesn't come down to that one person?
No, I think very much the president's in control of this discussion right now from the American side, and so we're hopeful to get those meetings with key decision makers that are close to him, to be able to get our message out, which is it doesn't have to be this way. We can work on transnational organized crime. We can work on your priorities. We can increase prosperity, and when you put 25% tariff on aluminum, that means Americans pay 25% more, and so it doesn't make sense to us, and there's better ways forward.
You've taken a pretty hard.
The president said that what Canada federally is often said is not good enough. Do you think the federal government can come with more to the table?
Yeah, we think there's lots of opportunities to work on issues of importance to the president, and we're happy to do that. We just need to know what they are, because it's not very clear.
You've been pretty vocal about hitting back on the U.S. if they do impose the tariff. So if they do rise to 50% on steel and aluminum, do you think Canada should reciprocate with the equal tariff hit?
Absolutely. We encourage the federal government, if we get hit, to hit back, but then none of us wants to be in this fight. We didn't ask for it, but we should definitely not shy away from it.
Would that take full export taxes on?
We're open to any discussion. Nothing is off the table for British Columbia. We're committed to working with the feds.
I think with some of the counter-China messaging we've seen, are you concerned about retaliation from China?
Well, I think, if the Americans' target is China, putting tariffs on Canada is the exact wrong thing to do. We provide critical minerals, energy, and other key inputs that they can only get from Canada. Their only other supplier is China, and so if China's your concern, then hitting Canada is the wrong way to go.
Fentanyl czar. Can I just get your reaction to the appointment of the fentanyl czar? Do you think this will in any way influence the Americans or acquiesce, or I guess meet some of their demands that they've had of Canada?
Yeah, I sure hope so. I think there's a lot of opportunity for coordination on fighting transnational organized crime, including fentanyl trafficking. And if that's what this individual can do for us, then I'm keen on that.
I just ask, did you request a meeting with the White House and receive any responses to this?
Yes, my understanding is there's active work happening on a meeting with the White House.
Do you think it'll happen in the next 24 hours?
I'm sure hopeful. Yeah, absolutely.
Are you
sure
here till
hopeful.
tomorrow?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh.
this way for
Premier, you asked Dominic LeBlanc to carry a message towards the public. What message did you want him to convey to Mr. Button?
Sure, we would like to know some certainty in this and around the structure of the table of negotiations. I mean, there's ongoing talks, but it seems like it's a three-legged table and it topples over every other day.
When you say certainty, what do you mean specifically? You want to know if tariffs are coming for certain?
No, I want to know in the next 3 weeks, what are the parameters? And I'm not asking Minister LeBlanc or Mr. Lutnick to disclose those publicly, but privately, what are the parameters in which they can have those discussions? Because you wake up one day and the parameter has changed immensely. We were told there was a pause, and then all of a sudden there's aluminum, and then they're talking about banks, and then they're talking about cars. That's a difficult situation to negotiate in, and you end up negotiating with yourself. So I would like Minister LeBlanc, I'm confident that he'll get this, some structure to what the conversation should be, with potentially some defined outcomes that could be beneficial to both Americans and Canadians.
It's clear to you that the U.S., that Trump wants Canada to give trade concessions, and you want to know what those concessions could be.
Well, hopefully there's no concessions, but it has to be at the table, and it should be done at an established table. Instead of waking up one morning and seeing that the table has been reset or it's been toppled over and we're starting from scratch, that's an environment that actually demands that we're negotiating with ourselves. So just set the structure. If CUSMA is the ultimate goal, let's talk about CUSMA.
To renegotiate CUSMA earlier rather than later, so we have some certainty in regards to that?
If that's the ultimate goal, I think that would be wise for the investment climate on both sides of the border. The uncertainty is not creating a positive investment climate right now. And everybody knows equity is allergic to uncertainty, and right now in Canada we need to grow the economy. So if this provides certainty on both sides of the border, then let's have that conversation. But that's in the purview of Mr. LeBlanc and Mr. Lutnick. So set the table, have it structured, and then have those discussions.
Did you ask Mr. LeBlanc
On the question of USMCA or CUSMA renegotiations, U.S. officials have been very clear that they want more access to Canadian dairy markets. They want the digital services tax to be scrapped. They want content rules for autos to be changed. What should Canada be willing to concede to successfully renegotiate CUSMA?
I don't think we should be willing to concede anything, and these are negotiations that have to happen at the appropriate tables. But discussing this in public, revealing our strategy in public, will only weaken the Canadian position. So Minister LeBlanc, after being informed from all the premiers about the regional sensitivities and specificities, has a unified Team Canada approach going into these discussions. But it will not serve Canadians well to have those discussions about what we're willing to concede or not concede in public.
But they'd be very clear. They'd be very
anything about sovereignty, whether or not he can perhaps relay a message to Donald Trump that Canada is not for sale, that we do not want to be the 51st state.
I did say that to Mr. LeBlanc, and I've said it in any conversations that I've had here in the United States. That those comments are hurtful, they're confusing to Canadians, they're hurtful to Canadians, and make no mistake, any of these discussions in the pursuit of solving this acute issue, we have to stand strong, we have to stand united, and in no way, shape, or form can we allow this economic threat to erode the edges of our strong maple leaf.
Are you concerned about retaliation from China, given the counter-China messaging we've seen on this trip?
I'm not.
Can you tell us exactly which U.S. politicians the premiers as a whole met with?
We've met with several House of Representatives. We've met with the Senate. We've met with a couple of senators. Multiple premiers have met with them.
No, I meant as a group.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to disclose our full schedule because it's still ongoing and it's changing. And I think you'll see as the day evolves that there's even new meetings happening. Thanks very much.
Canada can't rely on access to U.S. markets. What else should we be doing to either diversify trade, to improve the internal economy of it? How do you respond in a world where we do not have the same kind of access that's underpinned the Canadian economic system for decades?
Well, you know, I crossed the border just fine yesterday, maybe even quicker than
But seriously,
usual.
it looks like, if we take anything Donald Trump says seriously, it looks like we're entering a period in which tariffs will be a regular economic policy tool. Even if we can avoid some, everything suggests he will be using them more. Access to the U.S. market for Canada will not be guaranteed as in the past as much. What should Canada be doing to address that?
And what will happen if there's a Democrat in the White House in the future? Are they going to roll things back, or are we going to continue to see protectionism in the United States, no matter who's in the White House going forward?
It seems to be bipartisan agreement, and you can see this during the Biden administration.
Thank you.
And this too. There seems to be
for
bipartisan
making my
agreement.
rhetorical point for me. So I think Canadians need to have a long-term view of our economy. We are right next door to the United States of America. This is always going to be an important export market for us. At the same time, while Canadians are rightly thinking about the tariffs and the economic challenges that are potentially on the horizon, what is our long-term Canadian economic development strategy? What is our plan to make things? What is our plan to grow a tech industry? What is our plan to ensure that there's trade and blue-collar jobs for the average person out there in our country? I think, if anything, that we should be taking out of this current moment is, yes, we should be hedging our bets by diversifying, and we should ensure that there's internal trade barriers coming down. But more than anything, I think Canada needs a cohesive strategy to build our economy and to make things in our country for the next generation.
Do you think Canada should hit back if the tariffs do rise or stacked to 50% on steel and aluminum? Should Canada hit back with?
Well, we're extending that warm and hearty handshake. We're trying to make friends. And, in grade school, we didn't make friends by threatening to hit anybody. I think that was very clear in kindergarten. And so we're going to follow, I think, that first instance of let's keep things on a positive footing. And while we have this window with no tariffs, let's just try to make the most of that and ensure that we're building strong relationships.
Premier Ford said the other day, if someone hits you in the nose, you hit them twice as hard back, or pop them in the nose, I believe he said.
Yeah, and I guess if somebody is still just circling, then maybe it's time to size up and time to strategize and time to think, how does a smaller opponent effectively confront a larger situation? And the answer is leverage, right? Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu 101. So if we have leverage in a conversation that revolves around critical minerals, that revolves around energy, let's use those leverage points to our advantage, along with a healthy dose of Canadian pride, and make sure that we come into this situation and conversation with the U.S. being true to our values and protecting jobs for people at home.
With Arctic security and diversification of markets being in conversation, how much is the port of Churchill coming in?
Oh, it's huge. So, we just invested $80 million almost with the federal government. The fact that most Canadians don't even know that Manitoba is a maritime province. So when we share this news to an American audience that you can get to Tidewater by heading north from North Dakota and Nebraska and Iowa, I mean, a light bulb goes off. And then you talk about this is a presence in the Arctic, this is a presence in the north that helps regional Arctic security. I think our investments there are a smart long-term hedge to ensure that there's diversification and access to the European Union, but also that we are being a strong partner on security and defense with the U.S.
So you're having conversations with them about Canada's deep sea port?